Live from Algiers, this is World News Program. I'm Miriam Zian, and these are the headlines. The Zionist government's plan to construct 19 new settlements in the West Bank has drawn strong international condemnation. Meanwhile, the occupation maintains its aggressive measures, demolishing homes across several towns and villages, while settler attacks on Palestinians continue, causing multiple injuries. Coming up, Israeli airstrikes killed civilians in eastern and southern Lebanon. President Michel Aoun confirmed intensive diplomatic efforts to shield the country from the threat of Israeli war. And in Syria, Israel carried out new violations in Qunaytira, advancing into several villages. Next, the United Nations General Assembly reaffirmed the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination. Polisario Front welcomed the adoption of a resolution confirming the legal framework of the issue, while Spanish political parties urged the international community to honor its obligations towards Sahrawi rights. And attacks on Odessa and Kharkiv left several dead and wounded. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky proposes the creation of a demilitarized industrial zone east of the country, while the Kremlin said it is reviewing U.S. documents related to a potential peace agreement with Kiev. First in our news, several countries condemned the Israeli occupation government's approval of the construction of 19 new settlements in occupied West Bank. A joint statement issued on Wednesday by Britain, Belgium, Denmark, France, Italy, Iceland, Ireland, Japan, Malta, the Netherlands, Norway, and Spain, the countries stressed that the Israeli move violates international law and could further exacerbate instability.
We call on Israel to reverse this decision and to cancel the expansion of settlements. We reiterate that such unilateral actions within the framework of a broader intensification of settlement policies in the West Bank not only violate international law, but also fuel instability.
The Israeli occupation forces began on Thursday demolishing an inhabited house in the town of Al-Khadr, south of Beit Lahem in occupied West Bank. The Palestinian news agency reported that occupation forces started demolishing the two-story house, measuring 150 square meters in the Rukba area south of the town. The same sources added that occupation forces accompanied by bulldozers had stormed the Rukba area, sealed it off completely, and prevented residents' movement in preparation for the demolition. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization confirmed that more than 72,000 Palestinians farming and herding families in the West Bank are in urgent need of emergency assistance. A study published by the organization on Wednesday showed that around 90% of agricultural households have recently lost their income due to a sharp decline in crop and livestock production and sales as a result of the settler attacks. The Palestinian child was injured early Thursday during a raid by Israeli settlers on the town of Sa'ir, northeast of Al Khalil, in the occupied southern West Bank. Media outlets citing local Palestinian sources reported that groups of settlers attacked the town with stones, injuring a Palestinian infant. The sources added that the attack also involved the burning of vehicles and assaults on Palestinian homes. And Palestinian Prisoners' Affairs bodies confirmed that more than 9,300 male and female prisoners and detainees held in Israeli occupation prisons and detention centers are facing systematic torture and what they described as slow executions. In a joint statement issued on Thursday, the Commission of Detainees and Ex-Detainees Affairs and the Palestinian Prisoners Club reported an escalation in repression against detainees. This includes physical assaults, the use of stun grenades, police dogs, and electric shocks, as well as denying prisoners access to the prison yard and depriving them of basic necessities such as food, medical care, and clothing.
The occupation continues to carry out systemic destruction against prisoners and detainees through an integrated system whose core is the crime of systemic torture. This has affected all prisoners without exception, through methods and policies that have been entrenched to an unprecedented degree since the start of the war of genocide. This constitutes an inseparable part of the comprehensive genocidal war and the ongoing processes of colonial erasure against the Palestinian people across all Palestinian geographies.
And extremist settlers around the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound on Thursday morning through the Bab al-Maghariba under the protection of Israeli occupation forces. Media outlets citing sources from Al-Quds reported that 218 Zionist settlers entered the mosque compound, carried out provocative tours, and performed Talmudic rituals in its courtyards, amid tight measures imposed by the occupation authorities restricting Palestinian worshippers access to the mosque in order to secure the incursion. And 2 Lebanese nationals were killed on Thursday morning in an Israeli airstrike that targeted a vehicle in the Beqa' Valley in eastern Lebanon, while another was reported killed after succumbing to wounds sustained in an earlier attack. Media outlets citing local Lebanese sources reported that Israeli warplanes carried out an airstrike targeting a car on the road to the village of Hush al-Sayyid Ali in the Beqa', resulting in the deaths of 2 Lebanese individuals. Meanwhile, the Lebanese National News Agency reported that an officer from the General Security Directorate in the Iqlim al-Kharroub area died from injuries he sustained last week after an Israeli drone strike targeted his vehicle. Lebanese President Joseph Aoun affirmed that diplomatic contacts have never ceased in efforts to shield the country from the specter of war, expressing optimism about the course of negotiations and stressing that the next phase is moving in a positive direction. Speaking to journalists on Thursday, Aoun acknowledged that southern Lebanon remains an open wound, referring to ongoing Israeli attacks that continue to cause daily human and material losses, despite the ceasefire agreement that has been in effect since November 2024.
Our diplomatic contacts have not stopped until we have had enough of war, and the world has had enough of war. Naturally, now there are differences and everyone wants to raise their standards. But I'm optimistic and things will improve, God willing. God willing, things will be positive.
Israel renewed its violations of Syrian sovereignty on Thursday with a new incursion into Qunayt governorate in the southwest, deploying its forces in one of the villages and obstructing civilian movement. The Syrian Arab News Agency reported that an Israeli force consisting of 2 Hummer vehicles advanced in the morning into several villages in the southern countryside of Qunayt. The agency noted that the incursion originated from Tell al-Ahmar. Tell Ahmar followed the road leading to the village of Qudna, then reached the village of Ain Ziwan before proceeding to the village of Suwaisa, where the forces deployed inside the village and conducted searches of the passerby. The United Nations has renewed its affirmation of the legal framework of the Western Sahara issue as a decolonization matter. The United Nations issued in its official languages General Assembly Resolution number 89, which was adopted during its current session without a vote on the question of Western Sahara. The resolution reaffirmed the United Nations' responsibility toward the people of Western Sahara and stressed the inalienable right of all peoples to self-determination and independence. The Polisario Front welcomed the United Nations General Assembly's renewed adoption of a resolution reaffirming the legal framework of the Western Sahara issue and the UN's responsibility toward the Sahrawi people. In a statement to All 24 News on Thursday, the Polisario Front's representative to the UN and coordinator with the MINURSO mission, Sidi Muhammad Ammar, said the new General Assembly resolution confirms the legal and international framework of the Sahrawi issue as a decolonization case.
Polisario Front, a national liberation.
The resolution adopted by the United Nations General Assembly during its current session on the issue of Western Sahara is an important one, as it reaffirms the legal and international framework of the Sahrawi cause as a decolonization issue, inscribed on the agenda of the General Assembly and placed among its priority items, as well as the agendas of its subsidiary bodies since 1963. This entails reaffirming the unalienable rights of the Sahrawi people to self-determination and independence, in accordance with General Assembly Resolution 1514 on granting independence to colonial countries and peoples. This renewed affirmation by the General Assembly builds upon previous resolutions related to this issue, which has been listed on its agenda as a decolonization matter, thereby reinforcing the legal and international framework governing this cause.
The Spanish political coalition Izquierda Unida called for the completion of the decolonization process in Western Sahara and for defending the Sahrawi people against any attempt to confiscate their right to self-determination. The coalition criticized the stance of Spain's authorities on the Western Sahara issue, saying it does not align with the United Nations resolutions. According to Spanish media reports, the coalition's general coordinator, Enrique Santiago Romero, argued for respect for legal obligations toward the Sahrawi people and their right to freely determine their future through a UN-recognized referendum. He added that this process cannot be replaced by decisions taken outside the framework of international legitimacy. The League for the Protection of Sahrawi Prisoners in Moroccan prisons reported that Morocco has expelled 27 foreign observers from Sahrawi territory since 2014, including individuals from Spain, the United States, and Portugal, in an apparent effort to hide human rights violations. A joint statement with French Association for Friendship and Solidarity with the Peoples of Africa confirmed that the observers came from 21 countries, with the most recent cases involving 2 activists from the International Nonviolence Organization, covering the period from early 2014 to August 24 of last year. Algeria's Minister of State and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ahmed Attaf, received on Thursday in Algiers Japan's Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs, Yoi Oichi, who is paying an official visit to Algeria. The statement by the Algerian Ministry of Foreign Affairs said the meeting, attended by the ministry's Secretary General Lounès Maghraman, provided an opportunity to stress the need to elevate economic cooperation between the two countries to match the level of their distinguished political relations. And this would be achieved in particular through concrete measures aimed at increasing bilateral trade and encouraging Japanese economic operators to expand their direct investment in Algeria. Algeria and Japan praised their historic friendship and recent high-level exchanges. The Secretary General of the Algerian Foreign Ministry, Lounès Maghraman, highlighted the country's aligned views on key regional and international issues during his meeting with Japan's Deputy Foreign Minister. Both sides welcomed the current favorable context to boost political and economic ties and agreed to maintain regular bilateral consultations following the first session of the Algerian-Japanese Joint Economic Committee in Algiers last May. They also scheduled the 6th round of political consultations alongside the second committee meeting in Tokyo in early 2026. Maghraman additionally congratulated Japan on the success of Expo 2025 in Osaka, noting Algeria's active participation in its Silver Medal Award for the Best Pavilion Facade. Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune on Thursday received the Dean of the Grand Mosque of Paris, Dr. Shamsuddin Hafiz. A statement by the Algerian presidency said the meeting was attended by the presidential advisor in charge of the General Directorate of Communication, Kamal Sidi Said. The Algerian minister delegate to the Minister of National Defense and Chief of Staff of the National People's Army, General Said Shingriha, offered condolences over the death of the Chief of the Libyan General Staff and his accompanying delegation. A statement issued by the Algerian Ministry of National Defense on Thursday said that on instructions from Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune, Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces and Minister of National Defense, Army General Said Shingriha visited the Libyan embassy to present condolences and signed the condolence register following the death of the Chief of the Libyan General Staff and his accompanying delegation in a plane crash in Ankara, Turkey. The committee established by Libya's Interior Minister Imad Trablsi continues investigating the plane crash that killed Chief of Staff of the General Staff, Lieutenant General Mohammed Al-Haddad and his companions in coordination with Turkish authorities. The Criminal Investigation Department said the committee, led by Major General Mahmoud Al-Ajili, is overseeing the transfer of bodies to Libya, DNA identification and on-site searches for the wreckage to determine the circumstances of the incident. Mogadishu is making history as residents head to the polls, casting their votes directly for local authorities for the first time in over 50 years. Hossam Barkan has the report.
For the first time in more than half a century, the residents of Somalia's capital have voted directly to elect their municipal authorities. A historic election organized under the supervision of the National Independent Electoral and Boundary Commission.
I'm extremely excited about this election. It's something I've never seen in my life. An election like this is happening right before my eyes, and I can take part in a universal vote like this. As a mother, we're thrilled because we represent an important part of the population.
This is a historic day in fact. After 50 years plus, the Somali people, especially the people of Mogadishu, did not have the opportunity to express their vote and choose their representatives.
1,604 candidates from 20 political parties are competing to lead the regional administrations of the capital. But beyond the numbers, the stakes are high. This vote, presented by the government as shaping the future of Somali people, is widely seen as a test for the 2026 presidential election. These elections mark a decisive step in Somalia's democratic transition, part of the slow process to move away from the clan-based political system that has been in place for decades. A system inherited from the Civil War in which citizens did not vote directly, MPs were appointed by clans, and the president was elected by parliament. With this election, Somali authorities are testing a new model: one person, one vote. It is both a political and a security gamble in a country still facing instability and terrorist threats. The stated goal is to make these local elections a model for the eventual organization of national elections. These elections are important on multiple levels. They represent for Somalia a return to the ballot box after more than 50 years of interruption, since the fall of Siad Barre in 1969. The stakes are all the higher as many Somalis may be voting for the first time in their lives in what is essentially a test vote that could open new prospects for the people of Mogadishu.
In other news, Ukrainian authorities announced on Thursday that 3 people were killed and 15 others injured in Russian attacks targeting the Odessa and Kharkiv regions. The attack also caused damage to administrative and production buildings as well as warehouses, and sparked fires that rescue teams managed to control while a body was recovered from the rubble. In Kharkiv, the regional military administration reported that rocket strikes on the outskirts of the city left 2 dead and 13 injured, all of whom were transported to hospitals for necessary medical treatment. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced his willingness to consider withdrawing Ukrainian forces from the industrial region in Donbass in eastern Ukraine in exchange for a Russian pullback and to transform the area into a demilitarized free economic zone under international supervision. In a message to the Ukrainian people, Zelensky explained that this proposal, which addresses one of the most complex points of contention in the conflict, should be submitted to a public referendum. He also indicated that similar arrangements could be explored around the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. The Kremlin announced on Thursday that Moscow will continue talks with the U.S. following an analysis of materials presented by Russian envoy Kirill Dmitriev based on a decision by President Vladimir Putin. In the same context, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said that Moscow has expressed doubts about President Zelensky's ability to make appropriate decisions in light of his recent Christmas address.
Regarding the peace plan, we're analyzing what Putin's special envoy Kirill Dmitriev conveyed to Putin. We're analyzing this material and then, depending on the decisions made by the head of state, we'll continue our communication with the Americans.
Belgian King Philippe has reiterated his country's refusal to use Russian frozen assets in Europe. In his Christmas address, the king stated that Belgium continues to support Ukraine but opposes the use of frozen assets. Last week, Belgium rejected a proposal at the EU Council that would have provided a compensation loan using Russia's frozen assets in Europe to fund Ukraine over the next 2 years. The decision was driven by concerns over potential legal repercussions from Russia if these assets were used without a strong solidarity mechanism to protect EU member states.
L'Europe s'est construite sur un projet de paix.
Europe was built on a project of peace that enabled it to prosper. This peace, our most precious common good, is now threatened by hegemonic ambitions, particularly in Ukraine. Our country's commitment to the Ukrainian people remains firm and resolute. Our position on Russian assets does not call this into question in any way. Now is the time for us all to stand together within the European Union. Let us not allow anyone to divide us. Together, our democracies are much stronger than we might think.
The Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs accused the United States of resuming acts of piracy and theft in the Caribbean through its blockade of Venezuela. Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova said in statements that the current situation in the Caribbean represents a total breakdown of the law.
Today, we're witnessing lawlessness in the Caribbean Sea, where long-forgotten theft or other people's property, namely piracy, raiding, and banditry are being revived. We consistently advocate for de-escalation, maintenance of trust in relationship, and predictability. It is important not to let events develop in a destructive way. We hope that the pragmatism and rationality of the U.S. President Donald Trump will allow solutions to be found that are mutually acceptable to the parties within the framework of international legal norms.
And Reuters, citing a U.S. official, reported that the White House has ordered American forces to focus almost exclusively on imposing a blockade on Venezuelan oil for at least 2 months. The official added that while military options remain on the table, the primary focus is on using economic pressure first, through sanctions to achieve the outcome sought by the White House.
While military options remain on the table, the focus is on using economic pressure first through sanctions to achieve the outcome the White House seeks. Efforts so far have placed immense pressure on Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, and it is believed that Venezuela will face economic catastrophe by the end of January unless it agrees to make significant concessions to the United States.
And China accused the United States of attempting to distort its defense policies in order to hinder the improvement of relations between Beijing and New Delhi. In a press briefing published on Thursday, a spokesperson for the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs said that the border issue is a bilateral matter between China and India, emphasizing that relations between the two countries are managed from a long-term strategic perspective. The Chinese position followed a report from the U.S. Department of Defense suggesting that Beijing may seek to use the easing of border tensions with India to consolidate bilateral relations and prevent the strengthening of ties between Washington and New Delhi.
美方这份报告
This U.S. report distorts China's defense policy in an attempt to sow discord between China and other countries and find an excuse for maintaining its military hegemony. China firmly opposes that. China views and handles its relationship with India from a strategic height and long-term perspective and stands ready to strengthen communication, enhance mutual trust, promote cooperation, and handle differences properly with the Indian side to advance bilateral relations on a healthy and stable track.
And that's the end of World News Program. Thank you for watching, and bye-bye.